back to another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with the movers and shakers, those film and TV makers, the producers, directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, film editors, sound mixers, sound editors, VFX gurus, production designers, costume designers, composers, and so many more. And you all know how much I love speaking with all of these artisans and breaking down their artistic visions and how they bring TV shows and movies to life for you. This past weekend was Dances with Films Film Festival in New York. And from all accounts, it was a blast and a huge success. And you all know how much I love to champion indie films and always have, which makes Dances with Films one of my fave fests. And how lucky are we to not only have the big 2-week DWF in LA later in the year, but also this abbreviated version in New York. And I have to give a shout out to John Wildman and Susan Engel, two incredible publicists. John was running all of the quote-unquote orange carpets at DWF New York, and Susan was not only right there assisting him and running many of them, she was also handling a couple of the films and repping those on PR. So kudos to John and Susan. Now, I was lucky enough to get to screen a few of the Fest films before their premieres and screenings at dances, as well as speak with some very talented filmmakers who you're going to hear from right now. Two standout world premieres at Dances with Films New York, and films that I already love, are the elegant and emotionally beautiful Stop Time from writer-director Paul Schwartz, and then the edge of your seat human thriller Roof from director Salvatore Sciortino and writer Joshua Tate. And this is Salvatore's first directorial narrative feature. And the work belies it. It's that good. So sit back and take a listen as we dive in. First up, let's take a look at Stop Time and my exclusive interview with writer, director, editor, and cinematographer Paul Schwartz. Oh, and did I mention he also composed the film's end credit song? He is a man of many talents, let me tell you. Now, as mentioned, Stop Time had its world premiere on Saturday at Dances with Films New York. And while currently on the festival circuit, with future festivals upcoming, I anticipate the film won't be long before the film gets a distribution deal. Now, Stop Time tells the intertwined stories of a photographer named Peter DeVries and a theatrical lighting designer named Adriana Meyer. Both are carrying heavy burdens of sadness, burdens that mutual friends of theirs believe each could lighten for the other. Over the course of 24 hours in New York City, their lives circle until they meet at the opening of Peter's gallery show, which leads them both down a very unexpected path. Now, as I said, Stop Time is written and directed by Paul Schwartz, and it stars Nelson Avedon, Tara Westwood, the fabulous Patty McCormick, yes, classic film fans, this Patty McCormick, Kelly Dedmon, Christina Toth, Catherine Corico, and Daria Carrick. In this exclusive interview with Paul, he discussed the film, which he expanded from a 44-minute short. Now, the film is shot in black and white, and it's beautiful in black and white. The cinematography is gorgeous and explores themes of loss and discovery. And it was inspired by Paul's wife's breast cancer diagnosis. The story revolves around a photographer named Peter, with Adriana's backstory adding depth. Now, Schwartz did a mix of formats, including using Super 8 film for old home movies, and employed creative editing techniques, including time-lapse and one of my favorite visuals, superimpositions. The sound design, blending ambient sounds and music, just enhances the emotional impact of this film. Now, Schwartz, with a background in music and ballet, meticulously crafted this film, aiming for a delicate ballet-like elegance, which he definitely achieved in more ways than one. So take a listen as Paul Schwartz discusses Stop Time. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Debbie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, as I think Susan may have told you, I absolutely love Stop Time. It is exquisite. There is a quiet elegance to it. Watching the film, it reminds me of ballet. It mirrors it. Just on every level. Your use of color. I love that it's shot in black and white, so we really see shades of gray that metaphorically speak to the emotion. And then when you slowly do introduce color, or we have color in the home movies, that is so key and so poignant. I am just in love with this film, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. That's so great to hear. You're the first person from your side of the business that I've gotten a reaction from, because literally no one has seen it. I mean, other than the cast and a handful of friends.
Well, everybody is in for a treat when they see this one at Dances with Films. Now, I'm curious because I know you had done a short, 44 minutes. I don't consider 44 minutes shorts. I think they're mini movies, but you did expand it into a feature length. What was the impetus for this story?
All right, so for the short version or the full version?
For both, since this one arises from that.
What happened was I made a feature called The Season's 4 Love Stories, which went out kind of 2022 going into 2023. And it was right at the beginning of its festival trip that my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was February of 2023. And so, I dropped everything, and we spent the next 8 months of me just basically taking care of her through chemo and surgery and radiation and the whole thing. To cut to the end of that story, she's now completely fine. But it was a very serious, dark period of time. And when I emerged from that, I found that I had kind of been her cheerleader and her, everything's going to be fine. And I was like the positive force that I had a kind of let down, and I got very depressed, and I was unable to write, and I would sit in front of the computer thinking, you got to write something, and the blank screen went nowhere. And then in about February or March of 2024, Nelson, who plays the lead in this, who's a colleague of mine at the Actors Studio, called me up and said, whatever happened to that idea you had about a photographer? And I had indeed had an idea about a story involving a photographer. It was a completely different idea that I had mentioned to him, 18 months prior to that or a year prior to that, that I kind of just put it in the notebook and forgot about. And I thought, okay, Nelson's talking to me. I got to do something. And I sat down and wrote the entire 44-minute version in about 2 weeks. And that was all of the scenes that involve Peter. So if you extract Adriana's story, the whole story about her being adopted and the grandmother, just take that out. That was the 44-minute version. And we filmed that in May of 2024. And I did the editing work over the summer. And then I did a cast screening, let's, go see the film and go get a drink afterwards. And so they were all there. And at the screening, at the party afterwards, Nelson's wife came up to me and said, I'm really interested, what's Adriana's story? Because she has that line where she says, you and I both have histories. Some of yours is sad, mine too.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rachel, the impetus was that Rachel's saying, what's Adriana's story?
Yeah.
And I thought, if I can come up with a storyline for her, this could be a feature film. And the trick was finding a storyline that was not so overwhelmingly sad that she wouldn't go out that night. Because it all has to happen it all has to be set within the same 24-hour period in order to conform with the existing film about Nelson, which is about Peter, which is 24 hours. And so I tried various different things, and then the story that I came up with felt that it had the proper weight to show that she has something that she's dealing with, but not so much that she couldn't overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of how the mosaic got put together.
Wow. What a journey for this story.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful journey. I mean, your wife is now fine and healthy, which is the best thing as part of the mosaic here. But I love how you had the core story with Peter and then Adriana. And the minute I heard that line about the sadness, it's like you want to know more about Adriana and her past. And I love the route that you took with the idea of being adopted, coming from Poland, and then adding so much gravitas to that, and joy was casting Patty McCormick as Grandma.
Oh yeah, that was a real godsend. She's amazing.
Oh my, I love Patty. I've interviewed her a few times, typically at TCM Film Festival. She's still going strong. She is a kick in the butt, man.
Yeah, she just turned 80.
It's hard to believe. Hard to believe.
I know. And she's this little fragile bird of a person.
Yes.
But she was, with older actors, I've made a few films with, I made one film a few years ago with an actor in his mid-90s. And there's always, are they going to be on the text? 100%, completely solid textually. She was perfect.
Yeah. Now, once you had this all put together, you had your 44 minutes. What was your shooting process from a production standpoint? Because your cinematography is truly beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I love, as I mentioned, the use of color, that washed out, that kind of seafoam green, a red balloon, the yellow of the sun and the sky in the old home movies. Just visually, it is very elegant. In addition to the story being exquisite.
The concept was, I have a personal interest in black and white photography as a still photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the images that are Peter's, in his gallery show, those are all photographs of mine. So I came in and that I had made, in years before actually making this film. They were just sort of sitting in my catalog. And I had this idea that, Peter is a black and white photographer. And so that was sort of part of the reason for choosing to shoot it in black and white, but also that Peter is living in black and white because of his sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And the color only appears when he's remembering when his wife was alive.
Yeah.
So the dream that opens it, when he sees her or mistakes the person he sees on the streets of Brooklyn and suddenly imagines that he's seeing Marin, the home movies, and then the final sequence, which is another dream. And then the idea of once he and Tara connect in that final scene, that his world bleeds gradually from black and white into color.
Mm-hmm.
That he is emerging from the black and whiteness. That was, the conceit of it, the idea of it. I happen to love black and white. Some of my absolute favorite movies are black and white, not just, the great vintage black and white movies, but like a movie like Ida, the Polish movie, is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and it's in gorgeous black and white. It's the same. I can't remember his name, but it's the same cinematographer who did Hamnet, Lukash something or other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, that was kind of the motivation behind it. That the black and white isn't just an aesthetic choice; it's a motivated choice.
I'm like you. I love black and white film. I always have, because there is so much richness in the shades of gray and the contrast that you get. And it's so metaphoric, it's so emotional, and I think you can feel a lot more as you're watching black and white.
I agree with you. I if I could make everything in black and white, I would. I mean, it's not going to be suitable for every story, but I love it.
But something that you do when you are inserting color is your gradation of it, the saturation of it. You're never just blowing us away with color. No. You have tints at certain areas, just a shade. And of course, in that third act, where there is Peter and there's Marin, he's still in black and white, and she's getting a slow tint of color to her with her blonde hair. And I just love the delicacy of your use of color.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, the home movies of the little girl on the beach, that was actually shot on Super 8 film with like a 50-year-old Super 8 camera.
Mm-hmm. I got a couple of those.
Yeah, well, that's why it has that look. You can't really. I mean, you could try and do that digitally, but it's not.
No, definitely not the same thing. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Just because you theoretically can replicate something today with technology, it is never quite the same.
Also, by the way, when in the first time we see Adriana, and she's sitting at her kitchen table holding the photograph, and she's having like flashbacks to Poland, that was shot in Super 8 black and white.
I love when we first see the photograph that Adriana's holding, and the grain and texture. And yes, that's that's another gem of the Super 8 shooting in black and white.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very, very grainy. I shot it on Triac.
It works perfectly for this film, Paul.
Good.
What you also do in your editing process, you have some beautiful, beautiful superimpositions and dissolves. Two things that I wish filmmakers would use more often. I think superimpositions are a beautiful transition. They're wonderful with montages. Dissolves, you'd never lose the continuity of constantly cutting to black or something like that. So I'm curious about your visual choices there in going with that editing process.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, the one big kind of superimposition dissolve-y thing is in the gallery when they're hanging the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was thinking originally was that, and that's a combination of a lot of techniques, because the shot from behind him where we see the gallery assistants actually hanging the pictures as he's telling them what to do, that's a time lapse.
Yes.
So it's about, probably altogether, it's probably about 45 or 50 seconds of film that we shot over a period of 15 minutes, and the camera took a frame every second.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has that kind of, that time-lapsey look. So that sort of is already a little bit disorienting, because it's the first time this is the only thing in the film that's in any kind of slow motion, fast motion, whatever. And then by superimposing the side shots of Peter, which are not stop time, those the idea was we're seeing inside Peter's mind as he's hanging these pictures.
Yeah.
And then compounding that, he's doing that. Meanwhile, Adriana's getting ready. So we see her superimposed on that. Okay, now we know what she's doing, and then we come back into the gallery,
mm-hmm.
and then we're at the party. So it's like it's one long visual musical passage of making the transition from him doing this thing that he's been delaying doing, which is hanging this piece, all the way to it's now the actual opening, and he's going to meet Adriana for the first time.
Yeah, it is an absolutely gorgeous sequence. And as you're talking, I'm even looking at my notes. Peter gets to the gallery, time lapse to hang the last photo, supers. The gallery, Adriana's dressing for the show.
Right.
It's just so standout, and so it's delicate. And that's the word I keep going back to about this film. The way that you use your supers and your dissolves, it adds a delicacy.
Oh, well, that's great.
The same thing that we get with ballet. There's a delicacy when you're watching it with the tutus floating in the air and whatnot.
That's interesting. I mean, because I have a kind of substantial ballet background myself. Not at all as a dancer. My wife was a ballet dancer with American Ballet Theater for years. And she's now one of the big ballet teachers in New York City. I was involved in the musical department of New York City Ballet. Before I started making movies, I was a professional musician for years. And I composed 2 ballets for New York City Ballet, another 3 ballets for other companies. I've been around ballet my whole life. My mother was a ballet dancer.
Oh, my.
So it's interesting that you somehow pick up on that.
It just comes through in the visuals, in your pacing. It really, it emotionally resonates and shines through. So you definitely, ballet is in your blood, Paul. It is in your blood.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, I do.
Got to talk to you about your sound. Oh, my goodness. Your sound design and mix is so wonderful. When Peter is at the beach with Emma at Coney Island, and we hear the surf, the wind, the birds, the kids, especially while they're talking, slightly arguing from Emma's standpoint, and then with Peter there alone, we really hear the ambient nature of life around him. It is absolutely wonderful. As we move on later in the film, as we have the dinner party at Mason's, it's absolutely gorgeous between the images and the sound and the scoring, the jazz piano playing and the piano with a little bit behind it. How did you go about developing the sound for this? Because the sound is just as critical in this one for the emotional resonance of the film.
Well, you know, one of the things they say is that sound is actually more emotional than images. Mm-hmm. And so it is very important. You know, like I said, I have a musical background, and I also, part of my musical background professionally was that I was a record producer for 15 years. So understanding how to shape sound in the studio is something I'm quite familiar with. And, you know, as I go through my editing process, I tend to do everything at once, meaning that as I'm putting a scene together, I'm also doing the sound design, and if there's going to be music, I'm also writing the music. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I tailor the music to the images, and sometimes I cut the images to the music. It very much depends on the scene and how that scene is supposed to work. But so I kind of do whatever sound effects and ambiences there are going to be, I do while I'm actually putting the movie together in the editing process. However, the quality of the mix is entirely the hands of my post-production sound guy, whose name is Alan Douches, Douches. Mm-hmm. And he's a very, very experienced engineer and producer, and somebody that I've been working with for, since God knows, forever. And he is responsible for how everything ultimately is smooth, clean, how much of those waves you hear and how they go in and out. That's the whole mix is his.
Yeah.
I kind of put in the sound effect, but he's responsible for the quality of it.
Yeah, the mix is absolutely beautiful, and I do love how he modulates the sounds. So that nothing is overpowering. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful job sonically. Now, did you edit as you went along? Because first you had your 44 minutes. Then you turned this into...
Yeah, no, right.
So what was the editing process like?
In both cases, like the 44-minute, I edited the entire thing. Then I shot the 4 new scenes and then cut them into the film. So what I would do is I would take the 44-minute edit, cut at the end of the scene in the kitchen where Mason's talking to him on the phone, and then I would start sticking stuff in for that first Adriana scene. And then I would have to work out both visually and from a sound point of view how they overlap. But yeah, that was the way I did that.
Now, is your process to edit as you shoot, or get all the footage first and then shoot?
No, shoot everything then edit. I don't have time. I mean, I'm kind of a one-man band, so I get everything and then I sit down. I mean, now that I think of it, because there was, particularly with the Adriana scene, because we shot those kind of scattered, like over a period of a month. We had, I don't know, 5 or 6 shooting days scattered over 4 weeks. And I think I actually began looking at Adriana's first scene before we actually finished shooting. But nothing, I mean, it was very casual at that point.
And you truly are a one-man band. Is there anything you cannot do, Paul?
Sound mixing. I let Alan do that.
You are just amazing. I mean, your background in itself just lends itself to being a one-man band and making a film.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I will say that being a record producer with the way records are made now in terms of digital technology is excellent training for filmmaking, because it's a very similar process. It's you're creating bits of material, not necessarily in order, not necessarily kind of, if you have ABC, you might do C on day 1 and then B a week later, and then three months later you have to assemble them into the right order and then fix them and connect them. It's the same idea. And so I found it, I think it is actually, there's a natural kind of crossover of skills.
Your work just amazes me, I have to tell you. And I love the still photography in the gallery scene. I love your still photography. And the contrast that you have with those 9 final images that Peter is hanging, and the other standalone images that we briefly get to see around the room. I love them. They're just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Now,
thank you.
I'm also very impressed with your song "Gone" that you wrote. Did you write that specifically for this film?
No, that's something that I just have in my hip pocket. I produced a record in the early 2000s that was never released, and they just shelved it and forgot about it. And that song is from that record. It's
beautiful. It is really.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I've done. Actually, as a song.
Well, I'm glad that you decided to use it in Stop Time.
No, it works.
It works perfectly. So how exciting is it to have Stop Time in Dances with Films New York?
Well, I'm what's the word? I'm anticipating and nervous, because you just never know what's going to happen. But I've got a lot of friends coming. There's some industry people coming. I'm, excited. I actually, I did a test screening of the DCP yesterday at the Jacob Burns Film Center. In you know what that is, the Jacob Burns?
I have never been there. I have heard of it.
Okay, so it's this wonderful facility in Westchester County, just north of the city, that has 5 theaters, and they show a very, very highly curated program of films. And they have, these 5 theaters are absolutely gorgeous. They're the equipment is immaculate, the sound is immaculate, the seats are like you're in a screening room at MGM. I mean, it's just, it's fantastic. And I was able to get in there to see it, and what was so wonderful was to finally see the film on a big screen with cinema quality surround sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that for me is most exciting, is to show the film in a big room full of people and see how that plays. That's going to be really fun.
Well, if I were in New York, I would come see the film again.
Thank you.
Now, do you know yet, will you submit this to Dances with Films Los Angeles for later in the year?
I haven't gotten that far. It's out to a number of festivals, and yeah, we'll see. I should probably do that.
I think you should. If they're screening it in the festival in New York, there's no reason they should not accept the film for Los Angeles.
In LA too.
That's sure. Just it. Paul, job so well done. I truly am in love with this film, and it does make you feel like time has stopped as we're watching this story, Peter's story unfold and Adriana's story unfold. I want to see more films from you, more black and white films.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm trying to get something off the ground now. Meaning I'm trying to figure out how to write it. So I'll keep you informed.
Please, Paul. This has been so wonderful getting to speak with you today. And
thank you.
I can't wait to find out from Susan how the screening at Dances with Films goes next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And you go have a wonderful rest of your day and week as you bite your nails waiting for the film to screen.
I shall. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that was writer-director Paul Schwartz breaking down all the elements of Stop Time. Now, as I said, the film is currently on the Film Fest circuit, so stay tuned for updates on distribution and festivals where it will be playing. But I anticipate distribution won't be too far off. Now, in addition to speaking with Peter about Stop Time, I also had a lengthy chat with Patty McCormick, who I always love speaking with. And you can find that interview right now on the website, behindthelensonline.net. You can also find my full review of Stop Time, as well as Paul's interview and a written feature piece as well. So go to the website and check it all out. Patty's interview is fantastic. I will tell you that. And she's working on a very interesting project right now. You all know her best as playing Rhoda, the bad seed, from the 1956 film of the same name. Well, she's up to her bad ways again, this time voicing an animated character, the Dark Enchantress Cookie in Cookie Run Kingdom. So Patty is bad to the bone once again. But check out the interview with Patty because it's a lot of fun. And it's so nice to speak with her when it's not just at TCM Film Festival or on the red carpet. But now let's switch gears to a film that I was riveted by. Roof. That's it, one word. Roof. It's a human thriller, a nail-biter. It has some wonderful cinematic nods to beloved films of the past few decades. It boasts strong performances, creativity, and in all honesty, is a must-see film. Be it a must-see festival film or a must-see film, period. Now, the premise is, it's a basic premise. When a catastrophic blackout leaves two strangers, Dev, a trader who just lost his company millions, and Mary, a pregnant woman with nowhere to turn, trapped on a rooftop in downtown LA over a July 4th weekend, survival becomes a brutal waiting game. With no water, no exit, some dummy, and we're not going to say who, let the door shut and it automatically locks. So once you're on the roof, you're on the roof. And the city, oblivious to their cries for help. When you're at the top of a high rise, nobody's going to hear you down on the ground. Plus, with a power outage, the building they were in was evacuated. So there's that problem on top of it all. There's heat. It's extremely hot. They're hungry. They're thirsty. And it pushes them to the brink, both physically and mentally. And let's not forget, Mary is pregnant. As desperation sets in, a bond forms between them that blurs the lines between fear, trust, and something deeper. But as their bodies weaken and the roof ledge starts looking like the only escape, they must decide, wait for a rescue, or take fate into their own hands. As I said, this is directed by Salvatore Sciortino. This is Sal's directorial feature debut, and written by Josh Tate. Roof stars Asif Ali and Bella Heathcote. Great actors. So, in this fun, exclusive interview, Josh and Sal discuss Roof, highlighting its meticulous production details. Sal had nothing but praise for Jonathan Pope's cinematography, and you've heard me talk about Jonathan before with the film The Mannequin. He was DP for John Berardo and did amazing things visually with that film, and he does so again here. And Sal and I both were very quick to point out Jonathan's wonderful work, noting the visual interest despite the limited resources on a rooftop. Josh talked about the film's development from its initial concept inspired by The Hangover to its thematic evolution from existentialism to a journey from selfishness to selflessness. They both emphasize the importance of intentional set design, lighting, editing, and even the makeup and hair departments with the realism, which only added to the outstanding performances by Asif and Bella. Now think about it. You're outside, it's 100 degrees, you're there for 4 days, the sun is beating down on you. What are you going to look like? And trust me, makeup and hair did an amazing job there. Now, adding depth to the film is the score composed by Curtis Green and the end credit song by Kate Graham. Now, if Kate's name sounds familiar to many of you, it's because she's the daughter of Emmy-winning actress and General Hospital fan favorite Nancy Legrand, who has always kept her fans in the loop with Kate's burgeoning music career. So for all you General Hospital fans out there, make sure when this film comes around, check it out, because Kate's song is an added perk to seeing Roof. And you're going to love the story, Josh's story behind how Kate got involved in the film. So here they are, director Salvatore Sciortino and screenwriter Joshua Tate talking all things Roof. Well, I do have to tell you guys, I'm so happy to speak with you about Roof. I didn't know what to expect with this film. Sal, an amazing job.
Yes.
Your first feature directorial.
Thank you so much.
You paid so much attention to the details in this film. You're on a rooftop. You ain't got shit up on that rooftop to work with. And you've got to keep it visually interesting. You smartly bring in Jonathan Pope as your DP. I am a huge fan of Jonathan's just based on what he did for John Berardo for The Mannequin, which is a horror film. But there again, he was working with a loft for about 80% of the film. But he at least had some set dress. You have a broken fire hose, and you worked wonders. But you bring in, I have to commend the makeup process, because as they are up on the roof, we start seeing the lips cracking. We see the tar and the dirt under the fingernails. Bella's skin in particular, the cheeks, and the face is getting red with sunburn. because it is the 4th of July weekend. It's damn hot, and they're on a roof, and sun is reflecting back on them as well as from the sky. Just these little details. And then you bring in all this metaphor, particularly with Dev, as he's going from this pompous moron who is so obsessed with the idea of getting rich and wealth. And slowly, we see the jacket come off. We see the expensive belt come off. We see the very expensive shoes come off. Ultimately, we get to the lighter and the watch, his father's items that I think that really was like tacitly burdening him. You take us through this so we see character development through the visuals, through actual dialogue and performance, but it's all these details that make this film so damn interesting. It holds your attention, and I love it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for the words and the recap of that. I just wanted to add too that a lot of those details, really what those are is you highlighting all the different departments that came to the table and were able to execute and push in the direction of making the film the best it could be. So thank you for recognizing and highlighting that. And then aside from the departments in the production execution itself, the working with Josh writing this, a lot of that was baked into the script itself, right? A lot of that was, how do we make sure that we're not missing any piece, we're not leaving any plot holes in ways that we can to not invalidate the story itself, and then ultimately allow you to give into that world and believe in these characters and be there for their journey, right?
On every level. So I'm going to start here now with you, Josh. Where did the idea for this story arise, and what was your process to developing this script? It's like, hey, we got a roof. We got 2 people on a roof. Where do you go from there?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. It has a very inauspicious beginning. Sal and I would often have lunch together at work when we both worked at Bad Robot, and we would just sit around saying, wouldn't this be a cool movie, or wouldn't that be a cool movie? And everyone would just sort of like spitball ideas for a movie. And then one day we were talking about the movie The Hangover, and we were like, what happened to the guy while he was on the roof? That's the whole like plot twist at the end, is that he was just locked out on the roof the whole time. And then we thought that was kind of a funny idea, and we just started extrapolating from that. And then originally the script was about one man stuck on that roof, and it was much more existentialist. He goes crazy. He starts talking to a bird, and it was very much about the destruction of identity. It was sort of our core theme. And then I clearly remember the call we had with Brian Burke, who also used to work with us at Bad Robot. He's like, guys, you need someone else in the movie. You can't have a one-man monologue for 88 minutes, there is a script where it is a one-man monologue for 88 minutes. So we started thinking about, well, what other thematic elements could we bring in that would be expressed in a character that would deepen the story? And it went from being the sort of existentialist idea about the destruction of identity to this idea of taking a journey from selfishness to selflessness, which we think is, as human beings, is a critical journey that we should go through, and many of us do go through. And we expressed it in Dev in the way that you described earlier, and then we expressed it in Bella in the way she deals with her child. And the minute that happened, the minute we as with all things creative, they very often happen, but there's an accident that sort of is the tipping point. And then then you start piling on, and then you start realizing you have something, that you're on a path that interests you. And from there it became, 6 months really of just me and Sal talking every week, and I was writing and he was giving me ideas, and we were just sort of we were on the phone all the time and over email all the time. And then, that created one version of the script. And then when we get on, set, and we've hired Asif Ali, who is a brilliant comedian. And, I remember reading this about Woody Allen years ago. He's like, these are the line, but if you have something else you want to say, you can say that too. And I just think that's a great way to give actors freedom. And Sal told that to Asif. And so some of the funnier lines in the movie, as much as I'd like to take credit for them, they're off Sif's. In the moment, he said, this or that. So it was, the development process, it was long. It was a solid year and a half, probably, of us talking through it before we arrived at, the day one of shooting. And, but, and then it was Sif's contribution. And then it was, of course, Julian's contribution when we edited the movie. The movie, believe it or not, we shot the movie in order, but the scenes are not in perfect order that we shot them.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I don't know the sequences of it, but we realized, you can, I think Sal agrees with this, you can never be precious with your own work. You have to let the work decide what it wants to be, and then you have to be humble enough to follow that. And that ended up involving some reorganization of the story to the point where it is now where, the cut you saw is like, okay, we're happy with this. This is telling the story we wanted to tell in the way we wanted to do it with the means we had. And now go with God. Like, let's have audiences see this movie. And, it's out of your hands now. I can't speak for Sal, but it's always a little terrifying before you talk to someone who's seen your movie, because you have no idea what they think about it. And it's, it's an important thing to you as a person who created it. So I'm thrilled that you enjoyed the film. It's always, honestly, the best thing you can hear from anyone. It's just that you enjoyed your movie, and you're like, thank God, because that's what we wanted out of it.
Well, and I definitely enjoy the movie, but beyond enjoying the movie, I can enjoy a movie, but then it has all kinds of structural and production issues with cinematography or with editing. Here,
sure.
I don't see, there is none of that. You have paid attention. That year and a half work you put in before you went into production, and then working in post with Julian. And I think Julian's worked with a lot of the previs editing that he used to do, and I think still does. I think that really pays off, because you have some beautiful, beautiful editing sequences here. You make great use of superimpositions, which I think filmmakers don't take advantage of enough, because it adds a really nice cinematic element to a film, especially an indie film. You want it to rank up there with the big boys who have $300 million budgets. So you've got some beautiful superimpositions happening here, some nice montages, that third act montage, and I'm not going to give it away, but you're in slow motion, and then you also, in the sound, there's dialogue, but it's slowed down, and it's almost like faintly in the background because of what's happening visually. And the camera is coming in closer and closer. Jonathan does a great job with bringing it in for ECUs and some extreme ECUs on eyes. So you really employ all of the cinematic elements in the toolbox to tell this story. And it's just so beautifully done.
Working with Bad Robot, being close to the flame on some of the stuff that JJ's even done, there was an emphasis on really kind of trying to look behind the curtain and understand what matters, right? What really matters in filmmaking, and where should you spend the time, and in our case, where should you also spend the money, since it's limited. And that was our goal the entire time, which is everything that you're doing, I don't care if it's the set design, the props, the lighting, it's all an opportunity to help tell the story, right? And that's what we were trying to be intentional about, is how can even something as small, and I'm sure 99% of people won't catch this, as, Bella having a pretty neutral outfit, but within her purse, there's a lot of red elements, the cigarettes, the lining of the purse. Those are intentional. This idea of this inner confidence that she has always had. She just has to believe in herself by the end of the film. You know what I mean? So every little piece that we can try to infuse intentionality and storytelling, we did that. We tried to do that.
Well, I think you definitely succeeded with that. Now, I've got to talk to you, Sal, about your work with Jonathan Pope, and the cinematography. And this is also where your production designer, where Charity Honeycutt's work comes into play, with what is on that roof that Jonathan can then turn around and keep adding visual interest, because people are going to get bored really quick if we got two people sitting on a roof in the same spot for 4 days. But
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
not what happens. We get a variety of visuals. You make the most of angles and little things. Like the fire hose. It sparks references to Die Hard.
Yes.
And you've got a couple...
That is not an accident. That is not an accident. We talked about Die Hard a lot.
Well, considering you got the fire hose and you've got a vent. Immediately,
Yeah.
you've got your Die Hard. You've also using the window cleaner bucket that is down on the ground or almost to the ground. I immediately went to Martin Campbell's cleaner with Daisy Ridley.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got these great cinematic references in here. And as I'm watching, I knew that they were purposeful, especially the fire hose.
Yeah.
But you bring...
I think that's also a little bit of like, you know, the love of filmmaking that Josh and I have is like those are films that we admire, you know, things that we think worked well and we wanted to, you know, kind of pay a little bit of homage to. So there is a little bit of that for sure that comes across in it. As far as the question you asked about working with John, that was an incredible experience. You know, he was on board very early with the idea that there were going to be many limitations that we had up on this rooftop, especially when it comes to lighting itself.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of DPs want all the time in the world to set up their shots and light it the way they want and make it look exactly the way it's supposed to. But also supposed to is a subjective thing as well. You know, we wanted to try to lean into the grittiness, understand that it was going to be limited to what we could get across and get done. So a lot of bounce cards, a lot of, you know, flags to shade stuff, but not a lot of literal lighting within it other than, you know, nighttime stuff. So he was just on board early. And then also you mentioned it about like just being stuck on the roof for 90 minutes and how do you make that interesting? We tried to make a crescendo across the film that starts out with that follows our characters, right? It's like these isolated, a lot of negative space, very far apart shots in the beginning of the film with them. And also a lot of times even the blocking itself where early on in the film, they're sitting on an air vent, kind of waiting around, and their bodies are literally facing away from each other, right?
Yeah.
All the way to then kind of progressing where we get a little bit closer, a little tighter, and then obviously there's moments where they're, you know, face to face and extreme close-ups throughout the film. So that was one intentional piece, and then another one was just the color grading and trying to see is there a way that we can start out a little bit more washed out and bleached vibe on the roof and then kind of move it into a little bit more of a, you know, golden hour cinematic feel throughout the film. So John, I owe a lot of that to John. He was on board with that idea and that process. We were very close on set working together every step of the way to make sure we were getting the shots we needed in the time frame we had. You know, we were shooting 9 pages a day, which was crazy. But yeah, we were able to kind of shoot it a little docu-style in a way, but not with it feeling documentary style. More so just the practicality of how you're setting up the lights and the crew.
Now, I've got to ask you, because there is so little in terms of accoutrement and props that you have on a roof, how much of that was actually there? Did they really have a broken fire hose? Did they really have a broken water spigot to turn it on and off?
They did not have it. That was the production department coming in for us and building the box that Dev climbs on to reach the window washer platform that was constructed. And then also the air vent they sit on is constructed, and the fire hose itself. That's all been constructed, including the air vent that she climbs into. That's also added in as well.
Because I was wondering, because I've been up on many, many roofs before in tall office buildings, and generally there's not a whole lot there unless you've got swamp coolers, cooling systems, things like that. But you don't have the little accoutrement. And you even keep that very scant, what they have to work with. So it's very believable that how the heck are they going to get off the roof? There's no way to get off the roof. But then you also get some comedic moments in here. The nail file, the nail clippers, that scene is priceless. And so much of that is because of Bella and Asif and their performances. I could just imagine myself there yelling, "No, you're doing it too hard. You're going to break it. You're going to break the file. You're going to break it." And you hear her voice and it's rising in pitch. as she's getting frustrated with him. Some really fun stuff comes out of this too, and you wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's interesting, that scene specifically. It almost, in my mind, it's a little bit of a reflection of one of the earlier scenes in the film when he makes the trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
This unreasonable trade, but there's not someone there to call him out for being a little bit ridiculous. And in this case, he's doing a similar thing. He thinks he can control it. He thinks he's able to, take control of the situation, but he can't. And there's this other person that's calling him out for it in the moment. Right. Yeah,
and it's funny, all my notes on the film, and that's one of the things that I even have in my notes, is that the power position, the control position, it shifts from beginning to end. She actually is in control at the beginning. She's got the common sense. He doesn't want to listen. And slowly we start seeing more depth come into Dev and to Mary. And there is a total shift until we get to that third act. And eventually we are leveling up the playing field emotionally. And it's just so beautiful the way you've done that. And again, so much of that, I think Julian is responsible for in the editing process.
Yeah, the edit was definitely a place that we crafted and shaped a lot of it. Like Josh said earlier, there's full scenes that take place out of sequence that just fit more chronologically into the emotional sense out of what we had before, and we moved those around to just kind of everything honing in and amplifying that journey that they have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we also thought early on too that if you're going to put people in a single location with two actors, you have to have some humor. You have to break it up. You have to have lighthearted moments, like the water bottle scene and like the scene you mentioned before about the nail clippers. It's like, because if you don't have that, it gets very serious and very navel-gazing very quickly. And so let's make sure we're offering moments of levity and also kind of moments of action to the degree that we were able to pull off those action sequences, just so the film feels, broken up in a way that there's
dynamic
valleys and there's hills, in the story as it unwinds.
And you build in a lot of tension, too. There is a lot of tension, especially as we lead into some of the action sequences. Got Mary, who's pregnant, and she's going to be climbing up into a vent, and you're, like, cringing. It's like, oh, my God. Is she going to, fall? Is she going to miscarry? What's happening here? Mary is pretty fearless, and Dev gets to be the one who's more skittish and reaches a point he's afraid to do certain things. But you build tension, you have humor, and then, interestingly, your composer, Curtis Green. I love, early on, the score has almost some horror vibe in the motif, and that changes through the course of the film. So you start off thinking this is going to be a horror film. And I like how Curtis's music turns us on our head.
Yeah, I think Curtis was, he's such a talented guy when it comes to, writing and composing music for us. And it really elevates the film to, another degree. And having his experience, working closely with Michael Giacchino and that kind of presence, I think that also helped lead into, the level of experience that he has, making this film, taking this film to the next level. We workshopped it and we kind of honed it in with the themes for them. But yeah, I think it's, and we even had some of the cello that is at the end of the film was played live and recorded live, which I know sometimes, especially in the indie world, it's difficult to get any type of live musical performance throughout your score, Of
course, your end credits song, Alive, that Kate Graham does. You guys really need to lean into the fact that Kate wrote and sings that song because her mother promotes her so much to all the General Hospital fans.
I don't know.
Really?
Right, yeah. No. I've known Kate for years. I've known her since she was a kid because, I've known Michael for a while, and Kate was roommates with Mick, when they were in their early 20s. And she was great. We gave her I think a two sentence instruction. I was like, can you help us write a song? Can it feel sort of like this? Because we wanted it to burst. Because the movie is, it's it's hopefully people are feeling a little wrung out by the end of it because it's a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just this fierce burst of optimism at the end, and then she just walked away, and her and Charles worked on that song for a few weeks, and as soon as we heard it, we're like, yes, which is the greatest feeling in the world, and it's something I think too few filmmakers do, which is hire people you like and then trust them, and you'll be amazed at the degree to which they will go for you if they don't feel like they're being sort of puppeteered, and they have the freedom to sort of show their talent, to explore, what you've asked of them. And I think I love the song.
I think it's great. But I was just so tickled when I saw that it was Kate who did it and who was singing it. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope they lean into, and a DWF, mention Kate. Bring in those General Hospital fans who are diehard and who love her mother. So that's your bonus tip for the day, boys.
I know. I was going to say, as soon as I get off, I'm going to go on Reddit and hunt these communities down and let them know about it. I'm not kidding. No, it's the thing about any film festival. Like ultimately, the audience is your responsibility. It's not someone else's job. It's your job. So Sal and I have, doing everything we can because we want the theater to be sold out. We want people to be talking about our movie. And we are the right ambassadors to do that because we're the ones who worked on it, and we owe it to everyone who worked on the film and anyone who invested in us and in the movie to have a success to whatever degree we're able to bring it. So, any hints, I'll take them. I'll run. I will run with them.
But Josh, I have to commend you for what you just said. That so many indie filmmakers who don't have a big PR machine behind them, many who don't even have a publicist, and for over 40 years as a critic, I've been telling indie filmmakers a lot in your budget when you're going out on the festivals. Get yourself a publicist to help get the word out. But as you very smartly said, it's up to you guys to build your audience at this level. So I fully see you guys having a full house at Dances with Films.
Because we don't watch the film, we watch the audience. All filmmakers watch the audience.
Yeah.
They've seen the film a thousand times. So I'm just looking forward to that experience of being able to see people see our work.
Are you going to pull a Tom Cruise and stand in the back of the theater to watch them?
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not. I'm definitely not going to eat popcorn the way Tom does, which is always a source of constant amusement to me. It's so funny. I years and years ago, I worked on a Mission Impossible movie, and Tom, everyone who's ever worked with Tom is like, he's a really, he's a worker, man. He'll do whatever you need him to do for the movie. And when I saw those popcorn videos pop up, I was like, this guy's never eaten popcorn before, has he? He's claiming to be the world's greatest popcorn lover, and I'm like, something just doesn't line up here because he's throwing the popcorn in the air. Which you'll see if you meet me in person, you'll see I'm a popcorn eater, Deb. And we don't eat popcorn that way. We shovel it into our mouth
now,
like a hungry dog.
Now, is Dances with Films is this the premiere for Roof?
Yes, this is the premiere.
So, how excited are you to get into DWF New York?
I mean, I'm very excited about it. Mostly just because I'm excited for people to see the film, and share it with the world. But this one specifically, obviously playing in Manhattan, that's an amazing opportunity, and I'm very excited.
Now, do you anticipate that you'll also be in DWF LA later this year in June? I think.
Yeah, we'd love to. The idea is to do as many festivals as we can. To go through a run of festivals just so that we can travel with the film, meet people, and the goal is always how do we get the film into a place where people who aren't able to come to the theater in New York, can watch it, in Kansas or in Washington State or wherever they may be. So, we're up for doing whatever it takes to bring the film, to a spot where others can see it, whether that be a festival, whether that ultimately be, a streaming site or wherever, or, God willing, a theatrical release somewhere where people have the opportunity to see the movie as it was intended. Our movie was shot with a lot of wides. There's some Lawrence of Arabia shots in this movie because we're that's how you have to make a movie the way you want to make the movie. Don't try to overthink it. Do what you're passionate about and then see how it works out. And sizing was a big question. Sal and I talked a lot about that. I talked about the sizing of the frame because we wanted it to feel bad. And we knew we had limitations because of the location. So we were trying to figure out every way possible to open the film up to audiences, to make it feel a little, bigger than it may have been.
Well, and by doing that, Josh, going with a lot of wides, and it also, nobody gets really tired of looking at blue skies or fireworks at night or something like that.
Okay.
But it also makes those close-ups that much more impactful when we get them.
Yep.
When we see Dev's fingernails that have tar underneath them all around the cuticle, it's like, my God, I wouldn't want that man touching me, coming near me with the dirt on those fingers. But it's very striking when you have that contrast. And that's another one of the great things by having Jonathan as your DP, because I picked up on his work where he does work in contrast, visual contrast, that adds so much to your storytelling. Now, you shot this in Knoxville, correct?
We did.
Yep, that's right.
Any plans for a special screening in Knoxville?
We'd love to do a screening in Knoxville. We actually talked about going back to the same building and seeing it projected on the side of the building and have the crew come back up there. So that's definitely something we'd like. It's Kurt Willis, who runs the sort of the film department for Knoxville, was such a huge help because the movie was intended to be shot in Los Angeles. We were weeks away from shooting this movie in LA, and then there was a COVID outbreak, and then we were like, let's just wait a minute, and then during the time we were waiting, the idea of Knoxville came up, and LA is a tricky town to shoot in because everyone wants their piece, and it gets very expensive very quickly, even for indies.
Yeah.
Whereas in Knoxville, we almost laughed when we were talking to the locations person, and they're like, "We can get you this building. It's going to be $3,000," and we thought that was for a day, and no, that was for the month. and we had 2 floors of an office building below the roof, and honestly, Sal and I were just stunned. We're like, we'll figure it out. Because you may not, it's pretty invisible there. I don't know if you picked up on it, but this movie has well over 200 visual effect shots in it. And they are all the same shot, which is how do we remove the Knoxville skyline and replace it with an LA skyline so that it still feels like it's in Los Angeles, which was maddening. It was a maddening task to get there. But to your earlier question, I love Knoxville, love the people of Knoxville. The crew is great. They do a lot of true crime stuff there. So what you end up having is a crew base of really smart professionals who, when given the chance to make a purely narrative film, not only jump at the chance, but bring a wealth of experience and talent and spirit. And that's the other thing about John, too. Like, work aside, I love John's work, but I love John because his willingness to do anything it takes with a smile and, an alignment with whatever we needed, it was always there. It was like, John, we're going to need you to jump off the building for this shot. He'd be like, great, let's go. I'm going to land.
But jumping off buildings, you had safety measures in place. Let's stress that.
Yes, we definitely did.
All safety measures were in place. This is not the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote pulling off some stuff.
Yes.
No, we followed all the
multiple pieces. Like there are, I think, 4 different pieces to that scene that were shot in different areas on the roof and on the ground, and that are purely VFX. So it was complex. Yeah.
Safety was always the number one priority with whatever we were doing up on a roof, especially in a situation like that. I think anytime an actor ever even stood on an apple box, we had a stunt coordinator there, for protections.
Yeah.
Just amazing job, guys. So I got one last question for both of you. I mean, Sal, this is your first feature directorial. You both have a wealth of experience working at Bad Robot, all of your VFX work in the past, Sal, and Josh, working with JJ. Yep. So I've got to ask each of you, what did you learn about yourselves as filmmakers and storytellers in making Roof that you can now take forward into future productions?
For me, I would say that, obviously as the director of the film, there was a little bit of clarification about what that role even is. There's a lot of, yes, there's the stuff everybody knows about telling the actors what to do, but a lot of it also, is people management, understanding your crew and getting everyone to be marching towards the same goal. Another piece was, and this was specific to Bella and Asif, they're very different actors. They look and they take direction very differently, so understanding that communication style is going to change depending on your actors, and that's a personal connection and relationship you have with them to achieve and be successful, and that's going to be different for every single actor. That was something that kind of I was able to learn and understand going into the future films that I want to make.
And what about for you, Josh?
For me, it was that this is the place I want to be. I remember when the first big movie I ever had any meaningful role in was when we were doing the reshoots for Super 8 back in 2000, whatever it was, 2010. And then, I worked on the Star Wars movies, I worked on the Trek movies, I worked on the Mission Impossible movies, and I love big movies, I love going to big movies. But as a storyteller, I realized I want to make small movies. Like there's a freedom in it, there's an immediacy to it. There's something about having a small crew that well, that you're all talking together, because the only way to mount a truly large movie is to have just so much compartmentalization and so much delegation. That's the only way those machines can move. And again, I love those movies, but I don't want to be in that world. I want to be in the world where we're making smaller movies. We have, we're telling a story that may not necessarily be what, the Sonys or the Paramounts or the Warner Brothers or the Netflixes of the world want. But, at the end of the day, your life is your choices and what's going to make you happy. And I think what I realized about Ruth is what makes me happy is being right there in the middle of it and telling the exact story we want to tell and being able to do that. And then, the next movies I want to make are all like that. They're all, the idea of creating a little jewel box. It's not a lot of money, but also not a lot of risk because it's not a lot of money. And hopefully still being able, the tools today are so powerful. The idea of being able to pull off a beautifully cinematic image on an iPhone and to be able to edit and color your movie in Resolve, which is free. You're like, wait a minute, what is holding us back? All the tools that I came up making independent films on 16 millimeter film. Mm-hmm. There was real costs that you could not avoid. You had to pay for the film, you had to pay for the processing, you had to pay for the inner positives and the inner negatives and the negative cutting. And that was all real costs that you could not avoid. That is all gone. All that matters is the time that you're able to commit to it and the people you're able to convince to join you. And I just realized that is the place I want to play and live.
Well, from what I'm seeing from both of you with Ruth, you're both playing in the proper sandbox for the stories that you want to tell. And I can't wait to see. Are you going to work together on more or go your separate ways? Do you know yet?
Sal and I have things we want to make together already. Yeah, it's just a question of when are things going to line up that we can do it?
Well,
we have a great one.
No matter what you guys do,
stories we're going to tell one day.
Well, no matter what you guys do, count me in as watching. I am really impressed with what you've done with Ruth, and I really do love this film. I can't wait to hear about the audience reaction after they get to see it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything.
I fully expect you to get a distribution deal very quickly.
Here. Cheers to that. Do you own a distribution company?
No. But I'm watching this film and I'm thinking this would be perfect for Vertical. Maybe Gravitas as an alternative and not a primary, but Vertical, I think, definitely. Even Aura Entertainment. But Vertical is the one that just leapt out at me watching this as a great fit for a distributor.
Oh, great. Good advice. Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of opportunity. We just have to get eyes on the film and have people, fall in love with it the same way that we did and how you enjoyed it, and then kind of go from there with it.
Well, my fingers are crossed, and have a wonderful, wonderful premiere at Dances with Films New York next week.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I hope I get to speak with each of you again. And if you're in DWFLA later this year, I'm sure I'll run into you there.
Oh, great.
Amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
And that was Sal Sciortino and Josh Tate talking Roof. Now keep your eyes peeled for this one, because you don't want to miss it either at future film festivals or on distribution, which I expect will be sooner rather than later. And I'm thinking off the top of my head, Vertical Entertainment, I hope you look at this film, because this is something right up your alley. Vertical or even Saban. So I'm crossing fingers for both of the films today, Stop Time and Roof. But Roof, I see it right in the wheelhouse for those distributors. So that is all the time we have today. Make sure to join me again next week when I'll have more interesting conversations with very talented filmmakers. So until then, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.